This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your source for the latest Iowa ag news headlines right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, Mark Magnuson, and Andy Peterson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Friday, April 11th, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Sam Trainor of agmarket.net for our closing markets. But first, it is time for an interview in honor of Earth Month. It is National Pork Board's Jamie Burr and Daniel Peerless of Nestlé as we learn about some of the sustainability efforts going on from the National Pork Board. And that is here on Ag Matters PM. Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. And today, in honor of Earth Month, I'm joined by Jamie Burr. He is the National Pork Board's Chief Sustainability Officer. And also, we have here today Daniel Peerless, who is Nestlé's Global Sustainable Sourcing Lead. And in today's interview, we want to talk about the We Care ethical principles, how those factor into the supply chain, and they can build trust with the supply chain and also consumers as well. And of course, how that leads to the sustainability goals of the National Pork Board. So Jamie, first of all, I'd like to ask you here today, first of all, thanks for joining us. Could you please explain those We Care principles? I know we talk about them a lot, but just a little bit of a refresher, please.
You know, one thing that I think I want to make sure that we talk about it is the fact that the We Care ethical principles are not new. They're almost 17 years old. They were developed in 2008 for producers by producers. And they really are their commitment to those 6 We Care ethical principles, which are public health, our people, animal welfare, environment, and food safety. And those 6 things not only are ethical principles, but also they have now become our core values as a pork industry. Our board at Forum voted to say, as part of our strategic plan, we're going to elevate those to where they're now our core values. So it's been a continuous improvement journey, and excited to see that the board puts those ethical principles at such a high level.
And Jamie, to your point as well, you know, sustainability has kind of become a buzzword in the agriculture industry in terms of just hearing it more often than you maybe heard even 5 years ago. But like you said, pork producers, they've been at this for quite some time now. Talk about 17 years of this program alone. I mean, pork producers have been doing it the right way for quite some time, haven't they?
Absolutely. It's a bit like the song, "We Were Country Before Country Wasn't Cool." And it's been a long journey. And it's before that word was even really kind of main stage, if you will. And it's that We Care is our sustainability platform. And it is the way that we look at how not only, you know, kind of looking back into their supply chain, but it also We Care informs our partners such as Nestlé, who you'll get to hear from soon, their sustainability story as well. So it is very linked both up the stream and down the stream of our supply chain.
So Daniel, next up for you, I would like to ask you, first of all, your role, please, at Nestlé, and then your connection to the pork industry and how Nestlé is working alongside the pork industry towards these sustainability efforts.
Sure. So I'm the Global Sustainable Sourcing Lead for dairy, meat, poultry, and eggs with Nestlé. I sit on a team that has colleagues, counterparts for other priority ingredient categories for Nestlé, like soy, coffee, cocoa, things like that. But I focus on the animal protein sources. And Nestlé is really at its heart an agricultural company. You know, our impact, our ingredients, and everything we do comes from producers at all levels and all around the world. And programs like National Pork Board and We Care very much align with our responsible sourcing core requirements. So by establishing this program in the U.S. pork industry, they've given producers a real leg up, an advantage, and you know, some work towards meeting the requirements that Nestlé has in place for responsible sourcing within its supply chain. We have certain additional, you know, commitments or targets that we work towards, such as our net zero by 2050 climate target. And we have to work with and through our producers, but also with organizations like NPB, because we don't own the lands and we don't own the animals. And in many cases, we're fairly far removed. So having the partnership with NPB allows us to reach producers through a trusted partner that can handle, data privacy, do benchmarking, and all sorts of things that Nestle really hasn't been in the business of doing until now. But we need that help and that partnership to help us accomplish our goals and commitments.
Jamie, what checkoff funded resources are available then for producers to document and to report and to measure those sustainable practices on their farms?
Mark, I'd like to answer that question first with a formula, and that formula is principles times practices times proof equals trust. And I already talked about we care, and those are our principles, right? And then we've got, those are our principles. And then we got our practices, and that's how we do what we do within those principles. The proof is the piece that we're really working on in collaboration with Nestle, to where we're asking and collaborating with producers to gather their on-farm data in a very private way. And that data is collected by EOCene, and that fills that kind of that trust piece of that equation, if you will. So that data is aggregated. Again, it's kept private so that we can then report out on progress of how we are continuing to improve it. So a couple examples. For instance, we're focused also not just on the environment, but also let's talk about animal welfare. In Iowa alone, 99% of the producers enrolled in the program have a PQA, a certified team member that's working on the farm. And the importance of that is to show proof that our producers, our caretakers are trained in the responsible way of raising pigs. That program, by the way, which was developed for producers by producers, has been found to be in compliance with ISO, or Industry Standard Organization standards for animal welfare by USDA. So I think it's important that we show that we've got a lot of proof. We're continuing to build proof, and it's really exciting to see how producers are really digging into this program.
And then, Daniel, from your perspective at Nestle, kind of like you talked about earlier, you get these benchmarks, these standards that are met. And of course, as you mentioned, Nestle at its heart is kind of like an agriculture company. But at the same time, you're relying on this expert sourcing coming from the National Pork Board, kind of allows you then to take back basically a report card, isn't it, that you can show to your side of the supply chain and say, hey, they are meeting these standards, benchmarks, et cetera. And here's how I know, because we have the actual on-farm data.
Yeah, so like Jamie said, the on-farm data is, not, or identifiable on-farm data is not something that Nestle receives. And we want the producers to feel very comfortable sharing their data with our partners like EOCene and NPB. But we get aggregated reports back through our supply chain that show the scale of the actions and the benefits that are taking place, and how our suppliers and supply chains are compliant with our requirements, and how they help us move towards our commitments. Absolutely. Data is extremely important. At the end of every year, our social programs, our environmental programs get audited very much like finances do. And so if for us to make a claim to put into our reports our progress and our KPIs, that needs to be really high quality data. But again, not individually identifiable to farms and producers.
And then, Jamie, just to open things up here as we wrap up here today, is there anything else you'd like to pass along to our viewers, our listeners here in the state of Iowa when it comes to some of the things we've talked about here today?
Yes, Mark, two things I just want to mention. I think, and really building upon what Daniel said with their commitments, they have invested dollars in the program that we have that goes from on-farm report and then to practice implementation. Nestle and USDA are the ones that are providing those dollars to implement practices that reduce those environmental outcomes. And let me just share with you some Iowa data. Last year, we had 50,000 acres enrolled in this program. 99% of the producers enrolled in this program had a PQA certification. So that's to the animal health piece. Let's talk about environmental outcomes, 2 pieces of data there. In Iowa, across those 50,000 acres, producers sequestered 0.29 tons, a little over a quarter of a ton per acre of carbon into the ground. So we are a carbon sink in Iowa. We're taking manure, we're putting that on corn, we're producing that corn that's then going to the pig, and then the pig is producing the manure. It's a cycle, right? It's that nutrient cycle that's able to show and prove that we are actually reducing our environmental footprint. Another one to just share with you from a net carbon emissions perspective in Iowa alone on the farm, 0.43 tons is the negative amount of emissions that's produced on the farm. So Iowa producers are doing a fantastic job of showing that we are doing what's best for people, planet, and pigs.
And then, Daniel, the same question for you. Is there anything else you'd like to mention to our viewers and our listeners here in the state of Iowa about any of the We Care ethical principles we've talked about today and kind of the relationship with Nestlé?
Yeah, I just reinforce what Jamie just said about how Nestle is an investor. We need the participation and the partnership of the producers in order to achieve our goals. We make responsible sourcing commitments and we work towards them, but we understand that our commitments really roll upstream, and so we bring these resources to bear through our partners like NPB and other partners and other commodities. And we feel that's part of our responsibility, that we share this burden with, or this opportunity, even better, with the producers. And it should not be seen as a burden that only falls at the very beginning of the supply chain.
Well, very interesting conversation here today. Thanks so much for joining us, to Jamie Burr of the National Pork Board, and then and then Daniel Peerless of Nestlé. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jamie Burr of the National Pork Board and Daniel Peerless of Nestlé for joining today's show. Up next, it is the closing markets with Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. You're watching Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
You're watching Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and it is time now for closing markets. And I'm joined by Sam Trainor of agmarket.net. Sam, here at the end of what's been a wild week, what did we see with the trade in the grains here today?
Well, more volatile action in the trade action today. Corn and bean futures up sharply, especially soybeans today, up 14 to 20 cents there, depending on if you're looking at old crop or new crop. And livestock markets recovered well today following the stock market higher.
So, Sam, when you think about some of the things that's happened this week, maybe a little bit of a quieter end to the week, but we still saw some news here today. What did we see with some of these announcements about some potential sales?
Yeah, so we saw some rumors that China is actually buying some cargoes of soybeans. Like we mentioned before we got on the air here, didn't have that on my bingo card after having 125% tariff slapped onto China, but here we are nonetheless. And it is slightly unusual for us to be seeing these types of sales this time of the year. Normally you don't start to see these soybean sales at this time of the year. It's more in the winter months, and as we get closer to summer, you'll start seeing some of those sales, but we'll take it nonetheless, and soybean futures acted very positively to that today.
Where are we right now when it comes to weather concerns in the Corn Belt? On the eastern side, it has been very wet, obviously, and then on the western side, we're starting to hear some concerns about dryness.
Hit the nail on the head there. It's wet out east, dry out west, and I've been talking to several guys here locally in central Illinois, and nobody's ready to pull the trigger just yet. Soil conditions are close to being fit, but it's just not warm enough here. Guys are not ready to go and push it, especially with corn planting. They're not wanting to put it in when it's still fairly cold out. And I I think as we get further along here, say the next week to 2 weeks, if we don't warm up here in my area, and then as we get out closer to where the listeners are at there in Iowa, like you mentioned, it's been fairly dry there, so you should be able to get the crop in the ground fairly fast. But anytime you're planting in dry conditions, that always tends to make things a little bit more worrisome as we get into the growing season. You never want to be wishing for water, especially early on.
Let's talk now about the other side of the ag marketplace in the livestock complex. How did cattle and hogs trade here on Friday?
Cattle and hogs have had an incredible week of price action following the stock markets. Obviously, they are very sensitive to what's going on in the equities. But here today, they were able to post some strong numbers to close out the week. Feeder cattle up over $3, live cattle up over $1. So very good to see that for some of these cattle producers that have just been on a whirlwind here this week. Thankfully, though, we were near the high end of prices for quite some time. So albeit we had a pretty strong sell-off, we're still at pretty good price levels overall.
And what about the hog side?
Hogs were pretty quiet today. Didn't do a whole lot there. Only up about a dime in the hog market. So the hogs have not been as reactive to the prices that cattle have been this week. So a little bit easier to follow, I guess, if you will. But still, nonetheless, been a crazy week, no matter which markets you look at.
He is Sam Trainor of agmarket.net, our guest for Closing Markets. Sam, if our listeners would like to get in touch for more marketing information, what's the best way for them to do so?
Best way would be to visit our website at agmarket.net. Click on Intel. You'll get all of the information that we put out on a daily basis, which will include fundamental videos, technical videos, all that good stuff. Or you could just simply give us a call here at the normal office, 1-800-779-1515.
Lots of great resources from the team at agmarket.net. Check it out. Sam, thanks so much for the time. Always appreciate it. And have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you to Sam Trainor of agmarket.net for Closing Markets here today. Let's take a look at the numbers and how the markets closed. And you can find that information anytime under the Markets tab of our website at iowaagnet.com.
May corn closes up 7 1/4 at $4.90 1/4. May soybeans up 13 3/4 at $10.42 3/4. May soybean meal up $1.70 at $2.9960. May soybean oil up $1.03 at $47.35. Chicago wheat up 17 3/4 at $5.55 3/4. Minneapolis wheat up 14 1/2 at $6.16 1/2. Kansas City hard red wheat up 10 cents at $5.68 even. May oats up 6 1/4 at $3.45 3/4. On the Merc, April live cattle up $1.62 at $202.47. April feeder cattle up $2.40 at $285.17. May lean hogs up 7 cents at $86.57. May pork cutout up $1.15 at $94.80. Class 3 milk down 2 cents at $17.22.
That wraps up our market coverage for this Friday and brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on social media at Facebook, X, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Click on the notification icon to let you know whenever there's any new videos available for you to view. You can listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. For Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.